can see. All right, we're live.
Good afternoon / good evening for which point we're in right now. Thank you guys so much for coming. So as you've heard prior, the Finance Board over-allocated your organization during the budgetary process that happened over the summer. These amendments that have been introduced today are amendments to change the budgets back down to the precedent that was set for all of them. You guys will be given about 3 minutes to talk and explain your position to the board after on behalf of your club. And after that, the Finance Board representatives will have a chance to talk amongst themselves, just them, and then we'll shift back to you guys for any final closing remarks. But Justin, since he's the author of legislation, if you just want to give a brief overview of everything that's going on so that they're understanding before they start speaking, that'd be great.
So during the summer, near the end of it all, we over-allocated to 4 clubs a little too much money for common vision. We set a precedent for all clubs to max out $150. And so this legislation would basically just reduce that to giving you guys $150 for common vision. There's been much debate about this within the Finance Board on whether or not to do this, and our president over here, Brenda Deshpande, has already given us her word that she would veto it. And while we understand where she's coming from and where orgs in your position are coming from, we feel as though we're trying to be fair to the entire student org space.
All right. With that being said, you guys will have 3 minutes to both of your sides of education. If you want to write your name and follow the polls.
I'm not being here on behalf of
You're just chilling?
kind of.
All right. Go ahead and write your name. Still want to know who you are. But if you want to go, you can go ahead and start.
So the reallocation from, I think our club had 300 to 150 was a particular concern for our club's president because of one specific event that we have every year, Hour of Code. And the purpose of Hour of Code is that we're trying to reach students who are not in computer science, so that we can interest them in coding. And specifically, it was our vision to advertise through a Commons banner because we figure that people who are not already interested in computer science will not be checking about computer science stuff through digital marketing means. So the $150 amount is not enough for a competition banner package. So that's all I have to say about that.
Since these are all individual pieces of legislation, I'm going to assume that a majority of people who vote for one will be voting the same thing for the others. It's all in the same blanket. I'd like to reintroduce the kleptomaniacs. They're here as well, and give them time to speak and talk. Are there any objections to having all clubs present speak prior to moving into voting for individual pieces of legislation? Hearing no objections, is all ready to begin. I'm assuming it's a similar speech, but I think the board is here.
I was here at a meeting 2 weeks ago when this same issue was brought forth. However, it was not alerted to the clubs that it was being brought forth for. And so for this time, I'm glad that an email was sent forth. So I thank the board for that. But really, my stance has not changed on the issue in that it was something that was promised to our club and that we started planning our year for doing it on that budget. And then that promise met several other promises that were made by the board and by SGA in general, I suppose, were broken, such as getting the budget submitted in the early stages of the summer rather than at the beginning of the school year. Yeah, so otherwise, our club is just prepared to try and tank $100. That's what we've been preparing ourselves to do because we don't see much hope in this. So we actually have a fundraiser tonight at Leto's Pizza. If it's until 8 p.m. If any of you go there afterwards, we appreciate the support. All right. That'll be all my comments for tonight.
Or slightly unrelated, if we arrived after 8 p.m. would the funds no longer go to you?
I'm not sure how flexible they are with that. They actually were rather generous in that they don't get much business Tuesdays, and so they had it open from noon to 8 p.m. instead of, they usually give away 4-hour blocks for the fundraiser. But yeah, so if you can't go, then that's fine too. It's, you know, any bit counts.
Thank you. Sorry, I was slightly delayed. All right. So since no other clubs are present this time, we're going to go into discussion. Discussion this one is only for finance board representatives to talk amongst themselves. Bear in mind, most of the board here has already made their decision, but I still want to give you the opportunity to do so. However, during their talking, if you guys hear anything that you feel is out of place or is underrepresented or misconstrued of what you said or anything you want to add on, you will be given a time at the end to say so. Of course, if any other clubs during this period walk in with something to speak, I'm going to move to immediately end discussion to allow that club to say what they'd like to say before discussion is continued. And I will not be moving this prep till a vote until around 6:10 to give clubs adequate time that said they might be able to make it to come in and make it. Are there any objections to that? All right, with that being said, I'd like to open up discussion on these following bills and the issue being presented. First point, Scott is not here, as he is the main advocate for the opposing side. I think we all kind of pretty much know how this is going to go. One thing I'm going to do on this one is to move for a roll call vote, even though we don't have as many members here and it's not a required one. I still think it's important that everyone kind of knows where people stand, but we eventually have to move into a roll call vote. Even though voting for the chair is optional, in my situation, I don't believe that it will create a tie, and I don't believe that it's going to be out of order, so I will be planning to vote on this piece of legislation to make my voices clear, since during a roll call vote, I will have to be voting anyway. But with that being said, does anyone have any discussion points they'd like to make on this? Or has everyone kind of made up their mind?
So yes, if this passes, again, I will veto it. I just want to reiterate on my perspective a little bit, if it's okay. So the first point being that I think in any situation when you pass legislation allocating money to a club and saying, this is the money you have, I think it's a really dangerous precedent to set to take it away. That's just, kind of the basis of my argument in vetoing. And I want to emphasize kind of the gravity of the situation, that I would never veto anything that I thought was trivial or, not impactful. And I think that this is a really impactful decision that has implications more than just $100.
the issue comes up, we have to discuss and debate. That being said, starting in the order of positions written in alphabetical, we're going to start with the kleptomaniacs. Is there a motion on the floor regarding FBL 97-1920?
Do you get to decide if it's a roll call vote, or do you have to vote to have a roll call?
I have to motion for that, but
Okay, so this is one majority, or two-thirds?
simple majority. So, I just want to pull it up there. This is, after this, regarding the updating budget. I'd like to move for a roll call vote, given the importance of the situation. Seconded. All in favor, please raise your hands now. There's an irony in using a hands up vote to make a motion for a roll call vote. Alright, with that being said, is there a motion on the floor for FBL 97-1920?
Move to approve FBL 97-1920.
Seconded. Alright, proceeding with the roll call vote. Mohammed? Are you voting yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Ilsa? No. Justin?
Yes.
Nithya?
No.
Zane?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I'll be voting no on this legislation, which means this legislation fails. Moving on to FBL 98-1920. I'd like to move for a roll call vote. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? The motion carries. With that being said, is there a motion on the floor for this?
Move to approve FBL 98-1920.
Second.
Alright. We're going to move into a roll call vote. Mohammed?
Yes.
Ilsa? Justin?
Yes.
Nithya?
No.
Zane?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
With it being 3-3 and a tie, I'm going to cast a vote and I'm going to vote no. Therefore, this legislation fails. Moving on to FBL 99-1920. I'd like to move for a roll call vote. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? Alright, with that being said, is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve FBL 99-1920.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alright. Mohammed?
Yes.
Ilsa? Justin?
Yes.
Nithya?
No.
Zane?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
I'm going to cast the tiebreaking vote. No. Motion fails. Finally, FBL 100-1920. I'd like to move for a roll call vote. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? Alright, is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve FBL 100-1920.
Alright, is there a second?
Second.
Alright. Mohammed?
Yes.
Ilsa? Justin?
Yes.
Nithya?
No.
Zane?
No.
Michael?
Yes.
That being 3-3, I'm going to cast a tie-breaking vote, and I'm going to vote no. Therefore, this piece of legislation fails. So, your money stays where it is. And that's the final decision of this vote. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I apologize for how long it took for all this, especially with the last week being canceled and all of that. I'd like to thank you guys for coming in and advocating on behalf of your orgs, for advocating for what you believe was right. And I'd like to thank you guys very much for coming in. Thank you. How's everyone feeling right now? Justin?
Just like, say it on beat.
How you feeling? In regards to the concerns brought up from opposition sides regarding the piece of legislation for orgs that come in and start attacking you, feel free to direct those words to me as well. I would definitely help to take any share of the load at that point. That's just kind of how it is. That being said, we're going to move into Astronomy Club. After Astronomy Club, I'd like to just do a quick talk for a little bit of recess. But first, Astronomy Club FBL 101-1920. Nitya, do you want to introduce?
Okay, this is amendment to the Strawberry Club's fall 2019 budget.
Yes.
Are we allowed to sponsor legislation?
In this legislation, since it was a request of the board, I was the one who wrote the legislation, so it'd be the normal budgetary passing and sponsoring it. However, due to the nature of the legislation, the way I intend to vote, I shifted that author and sponsorship over, simply for the sole reason that I can't sponsor the legislation. I would not intend to vote on it.
Strawberry Club requested $175 for events for guest speakers, for 2 guest speakers, I believe. And while they're filling out their executive summary, they put that it was a GPM and that they weren't going to put the event on UMBC. And it's my perspective that because of those 2 things, that's the reason why Finance Board decided to not fund Strawberry Club. And so they came and petitioned us to request us to change that decision.
If you guys open up a piece of legislation, attachment A has the amount they were allocated. Attachment B has a secondary spreadsheet I created with amended numbers. This would be what would be allocated or what we could allocate. Attachment B can be amended if you believe that it is necessary to change those numbers around. Attachment B would be the proper budget that we would pass for them. But right now that budget listed is the max figure that we could give them based on what they requested and normal precedence of the board. So since you were here, you have about 3 minutes if you'd like to speak and argue your case from the board. I know you already did last week, so there's not really much more you'd have to say. But if there's anything you feel so inclined to wish to add, you're free to do so at this point.
Okay, I don't really have anything to add, but I guess I just kind of like want to reiterate that like we filled out our budget really not knowing our way around like all the workings of it. We realized that, you know, we like kind of checked some boxes that we didn't really need to check. So now that we have a better understanding of like how we should use those funds and like, you know, the distinction between like a GBM and an event, that we just, you know, kind of petition for funding for, you know, like for actual events, and so that's kind of it.
Thank you. Alright, so at this point we're going to move into a point of discussion. During discussion, only planning board reps and voting members can talk amongst themselves, along with our ex officio members. You guys won't be able to speak, but if you hear anything that you feel is like out of order or we misconstrued something you said, you will be given an opportunity at the end to speak on that. Alright, so we are now in a period of discussion regarding astronomy club. Does anyone have any points they'd like to bring up? Yes?
I just think that something that the board should consider is that one of the clubs that I'm a liaison for, I met with them last week and they had a very similar concern, and they brought it up saying like it was very much like the same situation where they weren't distinguishing between GBM and what their actual events were, and so they requested money for 4 or 5 events and we denied all of them. And so the president of that organization said to me, well, like this a very similar sort of sentiment, and also said that, you know, I heard that there are people coming in front of the board and like rewording like what they meant to put on their forms to get money, like, and sort of like saying it in a way that was like, oh, like that's unfair or something like that. After talking to them, I told them that the club that they thought was coming in to speak to us never actually came in, and I wasn't sure where this rumor had sort of started. But just moving forward, whatever happens, I feel like I'll have to go back and tell that club that we did vote a certain way for this club, and so I'm just saying that we will be opening the doors for clubs who are in very similar situations, because I don't think that this was, because as we discussed, the forms were kind of confusing and our wording was a little unclear. So we will be opening the door for a lot of clubs, I think, to come forward and sort of ask that we consider
I think, when Ari came to the group last week, I think the situation might have been more of like a transitional one and like not, like, obviously like, I know in the past they had said they hadn't received funding in the past, so I think like, not understanding like the new system that we just rolled out, you know, like obviously me and Carly last year's treasurer, did workshops regarding like submitting budgets and things like that, but I think if you don't have a good transition team, coming into it, it would be difficult to do as well. But I mean, I think again, it's a case by case situation. I think that's why we have the petition, because you can always bring it to your liaison and subsequently the board to petition your case. I think, I mean, I think like trying to reword it, I think might be just like different because, I mean, I think they are honest in that like it was mislabeled in the terms of the, it's like an actual event open to student organizations rather, or to students rather than like, you know, we want to have pizza at every GPM. So, I mean, I think that's just where I'm coming from in favor of the legislation, in that I think we should show like some grace to student organizations with this new process, with already the kind of delays that we've had that have not been our fault, but have also been our fault in terms of funding for this semester. So that's where I'm at.
So any thoughts I'd like to give this one?
I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with Zane about like boards are able to petition. I mean, given what you said, there could be many boards that haven't done petition, but they're allowed to do so. And I think like with this whole new system, there are a lot of different issues that have come up. So we went into this knowing that like it's not a perfect, it's not essential like perfect system. It's the first iteration of it. So I guess just being mindful of that and going forward.
Justin, any thoughts?
I mean, I understand if it's a transitional issue within the club. I'm just not sure like if we're responsible for that. And so why we would have to necessarily like sort of repair what like we didn't, you know, already like break in the first place. Not only that, but I do think it sets a very dangerous precedent because it's like there were a lot of clubs that put down GBMs on their sheet and they could come in and petition and say, oh no, what we really meant was that it was a special event. I know that one club that I talked to, Pre-Law Society, their treasurer was interested in getting funds for their LSAT prep courses, which they labeled as GBMs. And so this case-by-case basis is like, where do we draw the line at? Or what is a GBM and what's not a GBM? Because I do think the form did make clear, is this a general body meeting or not? Like, I think all clubs should have some understanding of what is a general body meeting.
Pretty much echoing what Justin said. I mean, I understand a lot of the confusion and stuff that came within the forms. However, the lines become very blurred when we have to, every single time we have to go back and try to adjust budgets due to clubs having different issues and confusion. I really feel sorry for the club that originally the request wasn't approved, but I feel this is a situation where there were a lot of organizations that wrote down GBMs and we had made a pretty clear decision that we weren't going to fund GBMs. And I feel like it's something that we should probably try to stick to as much as possible, since it is one of our president's messages.
I just kind of want to reiterate something. I think, kind of like what Brenda was saying before, in the last piece of legislation, showing empathy and giving grace. I know precedent specifically, but also processes are very important to us. But I feel like that should not trump everything in our decision. I think sometimes may be difficult to do, but I think case by case basis is just something that's gonna exist as long as we have the system for finance board. I mean, just to comment on, I mean, I honestly, in my opinion, I don't think it's fair for us to just, you know, be like, oh, it's a club issue, so it's not our fault. I mean, we are here to support student orgs, we're here to give these resources, and I think, you know, we have events like Leading Orgs, and few people show up to those to sit down and engage and talk with students, and student orgs, I think, and then say, oh, you know, we're not gonna fund it, because processes and precedents. I think that just sets a really bad tone, for how we want our relationships to be with student organizations. So, that's just that's where I stand. I think, you know, obviously we are tight on our money in terms of spending and whatnot, but I feel like this, again, is another issue that is on the board, is on us, and that we should recommend in whichever way we can possibly, and I think it can be through this piece of legislation.
So I like to say, like, I definitely understand your point saying empathy is important, but in like case by case basis, it's like, where do you draw the line for like practicality? I understand it's part of our job to advocate for student boards, but part of our job is also to make them understand. Like, if we just were to keep being empathetic for each case, it's like, do we have any objective standard where we can say, okay, we have to draw the line and say no? Like, where does that come in a case like this?
I mean, again, as long as we have the petition system operating, then we already have a case-by-case system, because, just when orgs present themselves or present their situation, every situation is basically unique almost, I would say. I mean, you can't really, compare the same request with the same event, per student organization. I mean, I understand in terms of speaking with precedent and processes, but I think that, I just think that given the way that we have already been doing this semester in terms of funding, in terms of relationship with orgs, I think it's really important that in deciding things that we're not only talking about precedents and processes, but we're talking about the relationships we want to have with organizations. So, and you know, whether that is through support, whether it is through allowing them to come in and talk with us about requests. I mean, the practicality is something we have to sit down and talk about, because the petition system is very vague. It just says you can come and petition the finance board about your request. So, I mean, that's obviously a conversation we have, but I think for now, obviously I'd be in favor of this legislation, but I mean, you do bring up a good point that where do we draw the line for practicality and people coming in, but I mean, the way the system is set up, it's pretty vague on how these petitions go and how they're accepted.
One quick point of order, and then we'll go to Ilsa. Legislation is being prepared and written by women budget procedures to create a more hardline system, the petition system. Currently, it's looking at your only opportunity to petition for your budget would be in either the 2 or 3 weeks following the release of budget documents to them. You can only petition for certain reasons that would have to go through the liaison, and the liaison also needs a wording that they bring it to the chair, and the chair will decide whether or not it comes before the meeting. So there's going to be a step to put in. That way it doesn't become as vague. But Ilsa, very quick.
Well, I just wanted to say real quick that, like, with the issue that we were with this running club, like we 100% understand that it wasn't, like, this is not you're not asking money for a general body meeting, that this was a legitimate event, and you're not trying to sneak the system and grant, like, funds. And there was a comment made about, like, the pizza and the general body meeting thing. Like, and I think that's where the case-by-case does come in, where it's like, we can look at what clubs present us and say, like, oh, we can use our common sense and, like, what we've learned and say, like, this is not a case of a club trying to, like, if you were able to say, this day is our general body meeting and this is our event, we'll be able to make that distinction. But again, just with the club that I personally talk to, I know that, like, I just feel like I'm gonna go back to them, because they are very hard set on the fact that no, it's the club was the garden, so it's like we have work days where we work on the garden. Those are our GBNs technically, but general body, then there are clubs that say general body, we just thought that meant all the students in the
UMBC can come because it's, and so like, yes, clubs should know what general body meeting is implying, but it's just like, it becomes a little, I don't know, weird, do you have something to say?
I don't know if general body meeting is such a specified term that would be an issue to determine
I've heard that
what does it
argument,
count or not.
But I'm just saying that clubs are.
I just, nothing personal on my part, I'm just saying, like, I don't think that's too hard of a term to grasp. And I'm pretty sure that's also explained in the previous student organization. Yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts they want to put in, Mohammed?
I mean, I kind of agree with Michael and Justin about having an objective standard. I mean, if this is a system that we agree on, I mean, we have to have some kind of precedent. If you're not going to have any precedent, then we're never going to move forward in this new system. I mean, that's a given. There's always going to be organizations that are going to have different goals. One club is different than another club. I mean, I get that point. However, in terms of the limited finances and the limited resources that we have, I think it's wise to stick to a system that was agreed upon from the very beginning and not make individual exceptions, because then you're going to have hundreds of organizations asking for exceptions and you're not going to have a uniform system.
Are there any other further discussion points regarding this issue?
I don't think we'll have hundreds
Yeah,
of words coming in for the statute to be on the specific thing about what they put on the executive summary, which only has so many options on it. And so if the petition system is going to be changed for the next the budgets for the next semester, then it would be it would just be for this semester budgets. And I think as a new system, having works on the petition for an Excel spreadsheet that wasn't entirely clear in my opinion, I think that's fine.
Same.
I would just like to reiterate also that the system is new. The old finance board system had been used for I don't even know how long. And so I don't know, however long the finance board had been created in its current conception is probably the long that system has been used. And so I think it's just important to remember that it's new. I've had a lot of experienced people that I've talked to, organization leaders who were confused in submitting budgets, and I think to be oh, you should know lingo, or student lingo, you should know how to do these processes, and all that. I think it's just moving away from trying to build that relationship with student orgs, that trust, that empathy, and trying to sit in their position, rather than sitting at the board, bringing up processes and precedents. Again, I'm not saying that we should, every case, throw them out, vote yes, give all the orgs money. I'm just saying in general, I think we really need to look at, and if we're serious about amendments to the budgetary policy, I think, if someone has an idea for it that needs to be brought up in a meeting, that's the first time I've heard of that. And it needs to be really open and comprehensive and explicitly told to our student organizations. Because if the way that we're going now, I don't see it getting any better if we don't start doing important things that we need to do. So that's all I'm going to leave it there for my piece in this legislation.
Alright, are there any new points of discussion?
I guess one thing I've always thought is that we never publicize the change budgetary statutes when some things when the whole budget submission went out. And one thing that's on there is it doesn't say GBM won't be funded at all, but it does say no food for GBM should be funded, and that's something that several orgs didn't know about.
That's also been a very, very long-standing precedent of the board, that when it comes to the budgetary statutes, things were kind of explained during the prior treasurer training, but the finance board has never approved for general body meetings. And I don't think it's something that clubs should have expected that they could have gotten this new system. And the idea between not funding GBM was again something decided by this board, because the majority of GBM requests were for food and other stuff. So that's kind of a precedent that we haven't ever really funded GBMs. So I don't think it's too much of a blindside to clubs that suddenly we're not funding them, since I don't think we ever funded them in the past. But are there any new points of discussion regarding this
assuming that everybody knows what the formal definition of like a general body meeting. We certainly didn't, and that's why we messed up our budget. You know, I guess it might make sense to people who are more familiar with the workings of SGA, but unfortunately not everybody is. Another thing I would like to add, we submitted this budget in the spring, and a lot of changes like went on. Like this semester we had meeting orgs, we had like new 25 live training and just different treasure training. And basically in the spring, we weren't really familiar with what we were doing. You know, when we said, you know, we wanted the money for general body meetings, we were kind of thinking, oh, well, this is open to anyone who wants to come. And that's what we thought it meant. Obviously it doesn't. And we know that now. And we don't want it just for like, you know, we are having events and we do want this money for special events. But now that we've received like further training and I guess we kind of know what's going on more, I mean, I can probably say that our club is not going to make this mistake again. We're going to make sure we pass down like a good, you know, understanding of the workings, and we're not going to, you know, this isn't going to happen again. It was really a matter of we just weren't equipped, like we just weren't really knowledgeable about it. We now are, and we realized that basically we checked a box we didn't need to check.
Thank you so much. With that being said, is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve FPL 101.
Second.
Alright. All in favor of approving FBL 101-1920, please raise your hands now. All opposed? Yeah, I owe you a Mountain Dew. I'm going to be voting no on this budget, as I stated prior. So unfortunately, this amendment fails, or this motion fails. Thank you for coming in. I'm really sorry that we were out of time. But the liaison will be able to help you out with the next process and make sure that for the next events that come up, you'll be able to get
Is our liaison present?
Who's astronomy club's liaison?
Elise or?
Elise is not.
I believe it's
I'll walk it up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sam. That being said, we don't have anything else on our agenda until 7 o'clock. While I am going to call our recess officially now, I think it'd be good for us to kind of just sit down and talk about stuff. Are there any objections to that?
Did have SRC with them, so did you just come out later?
Yeah, this way can't come in until 7. So we will go to 7.
What about
EWB can't come in until 7:30.